I want to show you how to use the mini lathe here. A lathe is used to turn square stock like this into spindles. Spindles like we see on table legs, like this one right here. So what it does is it turns the material real fast and you carve a little pattern into it as it's turning. Or something like this, we've got a set of little shelf pegs here. Or you could also do something called faceplate turning, where I take this little plate here and I screw it onto a piece of material and I turn it onto our headstock here, fasten in place. Okay. Now I can carve a bowl, plates, frisbees, that sort of thing. Anything that's kind of open-ended here where I need to carve out the center. So we can either do spindle turning in between our two centers here or faceplate turning. So I want to set it up for some spindle turning. First of all, I need to prepare the square stock here. So what I did was I used the X method on both ends, found the center, and center punched it on both ends. On this side of my lathe, I've got a live center. It turns with the material and there's a sharp little point there that's going to go into one of these center punches. On the other end, I don't have a center in there just yet. There's a spur center available to you. It might be on this little rack with your set of lathe chisels, or it might be actually in the headstock here. So we're going to take our spur center and our square stock. I'm just going to put the point of that spur center into my center punch, and then I'm going to grab one of these dead blow mallets and I'm going to pound the spur center into the end. I want to use one of these rubber mallets here, a dead blow mallet, because if I use just a normal claw hammer, eventually it's going to kind of deform my spur center and it's going to mushroom over. So I don't want to do that. I want to keep it intact. I'm going to use a softer tool here. So now what I can do is take my tailstock and I'll back it off a little bit and slide your spur center into the headstock. I'm going to take the tailstock, I'm going to slide it up on the bed until it's inside that center punch. Now I'm going to secure the tailstock down to the bed with this clamp, and I'm going to release the spindle on the tailstock so it's loose. I'm going to put some pressure from the tailstock pushing this direction into the spur center. If you don't have this tight, it's going to start moving on you as you start cutting, and it's going to kind of tear up the ends there. And you'll see it stop spinning if it's too loose. So I'm going to put some decent pressure on there, and I'm watching to make sure that this tailstock doesn't just keep sliding down on the bed here. So it's nice and tight. I'm going to lock the spindle back in place. So now it's secure. It won't slide out on me as I'm carving out the material. Then I've got the tool rest here. The tool rest is used to do just that. You rest a tool on it in order to give you a little more control when you're cutting. So I'm going to adjust my tool rest so it's close to the material but not touching it. So I'm going to take the material and I'm going to turn it a few times by hand. Make sure it clears the tool rest. So right now I just got a small gap between my tool rest and the material. So I know all that's good. Then what I want to do is worry about my speed. If I take a close look, right here it gives you your spindle speeds and the RPMs. It's the pulley here, this belt, is set the farthest over to the right. So I'm at 3,975 RPMs. That's really fast. You only want to use that when you're sanding, doing some finishing work. I would suggest using kind of a mid-range speed here. We don't need to go as slow as 500 RPMs. You would want 500 RPMs if you got a really large piece of material, which these mini lathes really can't handle anyway. So I would suggest doing something like this 1800 RPMs. It's nice kind of medium speed, and you can keep it at that speed for almost everything. If you want to speed it up for sanding, then you can move it over to one of the two right positions. So I need to move this belt over a couple notches. In order to do that, I'm going to make sure that the lathe is unplugged. I'm going to open up this little door off to the side. Down here, this little clamp holds the tension on the motor here. So I'm going to loosen this up and this bar helps you move the motor up to release tension off of the belt. Now what I want to do is get the belt off of the largest wheel. So the largest wheel is down here in the bottom. You can't see it. So I'm just going to kind of use my fingers and turn the pulley down here and just get it off of that position. Now it's real loose for me to move. So I'm going to position it up here and get it on the other third wheel from the right at the bottom. You're not going to be able to just move it on there with your hands. So give it a few rotations. That'll help pull that pulley onto the wheel there, or that belt onto the wheel. And then when the belt is on the 1/2/3 position up here and the 1/2/3 position down low off the motor, now I'm going to take the motor lever, press it down tight so there's a lot of tension on the belt again, and lock it in place. It's too loose, you're going to hear some squeaking, maybe a little burning of the rubber of the belt. Okay, so it's nice and tight. It's at my 1800 RPMs. Close the little flap, close this flap as well. All right, so now I'm ready to start spindle turning here. I'm going to secure this down to the table with a couple of clamps. Just make sure it doesn't move on me. I'm going to select a gouge tool. So a gouge is the chisel that kind of is shaped like celery. It looks like this one here. This is what we use to take square stock and turn it down into cylindrical form. So there's 3 different size gouges on here. It really doesn't matter which one you want to use. If you've got some tighter spaces, you might want to use the smaller gouge. Larger spaces like this, I can use the largest 1-inch gouge. Okay, so it's all set, speed is all set, got my tool rest is all set. I'm going to plug it in. Turn it on is real simple, you just flip up the switch. So now it's moving. Now with my chisel, I'm going to put it so the cutting surface is up because the material is coming over the top and down toward the tool rest. So I'm going to hold the chisel perfectly horizontal like this, one hand up by the tool rest, resting on the tool rest there, the other back on the handle. Helps me get some control. Now I just scrape across. And I can keep doing that until it's all the way down to a cylinder. Since this tool rest is only this big, I might have to adjust. Might have to move it down a little bit. Lock it in, turn it by hand a few times, it's all set. Now I can scrape it. And so again, I can keep doing that until it's all the way down to a cylinder. When you're not using a chisel, you need to put it back in the rack. You don't want to leave it out on the table and potentially let it fall off the table here. Okay? So after it's down to a cylinder, now you can start doing some shaping with some of the other chisels. You can play around with that. When you're all done shaping and you want to sand it, what you need to do is take off the tool rest. So you don't have to take off this whole carriage, you can just take off the tool rest itself. And then you're going to want to use some abrasive paper here that has cloth backing. I got some for you. We're going to start with the 80 grit just like any other kind of sanding job. Use the roughest stuff first. And if you want, you can turn the speed up again, move the belt over on the pulleys. Otherwise, 1800 is probably fine. But I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to wrap my sandpaper around, and then I'm just going to sand. And you keep doing that with each level of sandpaper until you get your desired finish. Okay? Now, to take it off, let's unplug it. Just unclamp your spindle on the tailstock, back it off. You might have to release the tailstock from the bed, and it just comes off the spur center. To get the spur center out, we can use the little ramrod here. We put it straight into the hole in the headstock, hold on to the spur, give it a few taps till it comes out. Okay? And that can be stored in your rack here. Now while you're turning and you want to check your dimensions, it's easiest to check it with a calipers. Right here I've got an outside caliper, so if I want to check my diameters, what you're going to want to do is shut off the machine. You never want to use the calipers while it's running, because if these little jaws catch on the material, it's going to go flying on you. Okay, so shut off the machine if you're going to use either the outside calipers or inside calipers if you're doing something like an inside dimension on like a bowl or something. So always shut off the machine when you use your calipers. When your faceplate turning and you want to secure the faceplate, you can flip open this flap. Right here you see a little pin. It's spring loaded. You also see little holes in the side of this pulley here. So you can position it so the pin goes straight into one of those holes, and then it just kind of screws into the headstock here. Okay, so now the spindle will not turn on you, which will allow you to easily tighten and loosen your faceplate here. Okay, so that's how you get that faceplate on and off. Make sure you do all your adjustments with the machine unplugged. Another option to secure your material is one of these 4-jaw chucks. They go on the same way as the faceplate. They just screw right onto the headstock. So those get secured in, and there's a key, little chuck key that you can use to loosen and tighten it. So I can take square stock like this and fasten it into my 4-jaw chuck, and then use my live center on my tailstock to secure the other end. Or if you're doing something like a bowl, what you want to do is look at this kind of dovetailed feature on your chuck. So in order to use that dovetail feature, you actually have to cut out a little pocket on your material. And the pocket looks like this. So if we take our chuck, that's going to fit up inside here, and then I can expand the jaws so it pushes on the outside of this little pocket there, and then you're free to cut away the inside of bowls. Okay? In order to get that pocket, I have a special tool carved out to give you that dovetailed edge there. Okay? So those are the tools you can use with your 4-jaw chuck. Now when you're all done with the lathe, make sure you put the tool rest back so we don't lose it. And we'll take off any chucks or face plates. Put those back on the rack where you got it. And make sure this little pin here is released from the pulley. That way if someone doesn't go to use it and they're not sure, they don't know that it's in position or not. I don't want to burn out the motor. Okay? Then we can take off our clamps, wrap up the cord, and put it away.